Cyber Monday is one of the biggest online shopping days of the year. In 2015, online sales grew to over $2 billion. And of course, with all the online activity, 'tis the season of hackers. It's important to protect yourself when shopping online. Our first guest is the cybersecurity expert at Longwood University, joining us with helpful information. We welcome Dr. Daryl Carpenter to Virginia this morning. Dr. Carpenter, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you for having me.
We hear so much about the cyber sales and spending time online and having that experience, especially this time of year. You know, we're all time starved, so a lot of us are probably heading that way. But it is you get a little overwhelmed, frankly, with how to protect yourself.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of threats out there that you can fall victim to. There's fake websites, there's insecure websites, vendors that don't do a good job of protecting the data that you provide to them when you make a purchase. So there's a lot of things that you have to watch out for as an online user.
What's the number one thing to keep in mind?
I would say that probably the number one thing to keep in mind is to do business with a reputable vendor, somebody that you have experience with, because it's just too easy for a new vendor that you don't know, that you don't have a relationship with, to take your data and store it in an insecure fashion, which makes you vulnerable down the road after you've made your purchase and you're not even thinking about that anymore.
You raise a great point. I hadn't even considered that. You may end up shopping with someone you know and trust, but depending on how they're storing your information on the other end, well, I don't even want to open that Pandora's box. So use someone you trust. What about passwords? How big of a difference does this make?
Interestingly enough, in the cybersecurity realm, we typically say there's no such thing as a secure password. You can't make your password long enough or complex enough for it to really be secure. But if you're going to use a password, use a different password on every website that you use, so that if one of them is compromised, all of your accounts with every online vendor are not compromised. And try to not use the easiest password that you can make work with the system. Choose a complex password, and one of the movements that's popular now is, instead of talking in terms of passwords, we talk in terms of passphrases. So use a series of words that make a phrase that you can remember. And that way it makes it a lot longer and more secure.
Yeah, and I'll have to ask you, what's your advice for how to remember that? No, I'm just kidding. Because then I feel like we ultimately end up writing them down and that sort of thing. So you have to do something, as you say, that is something easy that you go to. It almost comes as second nature for you, but is complex.
So I've heard some good ideas in that. One person told me that they have several grandchildren. So they make a different passphrase with each different grandchild's name embedded in the passphrase, and they can remember all of those because they know their grandchildren's name, and it kind of sparks their memory as to what the passphrase is. But you could do that with hobbies or something like that, and use different terms that have some meaning to you.
Yeah. Dr. Carpenter, we have about 45 seconds left, and all of us seem to be on our devices, right? Shopping anywhere and everywhere all the time, and you're on a variety of different networks, right? You're picking up things all over. How do we combat any sensitivities there? What's the number one thing to keep in mind there?
Well, one thing is there's a brand new vulnerability in our wireless networks that was released last month, and it affects virtually every wireless device out there. And so you need to be very aware of your environment when you're using a wireless network, especially if you're going to be around other people for a period of time. You're in your apartment, you're on a train, you're in the airport. You want to make sure that somebody is not potentially snooping your data. The biggest thing there is make sure you've recently updated the security settings on your device. You want to make sure you do that because it's a new vulnerability, and vendors are really pushing out patches right now to try to improve their devices.
Great ideas.
That, and if you're around people with cell phones, be really careful, because the cameras in a modern cell phone can record what you're doing on your device while you're not paying attention, and they can record your username, password, all the account information you put in.
So keep it hidden, and right now go update those security settings, do the patches. So nice to meet you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Happy shopping this season. Great tips, Dr. Carpenter. For more information, we're going to have a link on our show website, WTVR.com/VTN.